Hey, look, you talked about getting your family and getting your kids to play games. And specifically, we're talking about kids here, not significant others.
Yep.
I just want to have a quick chat about this because I was having to think about this the other day, which is so many kids love games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now is the best time ever to have kids if you're a board gamer, because the amount of games that you can introduce to them is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I remember, I've talked about it. Reese talked about it. Ralph's now talking about it. Like, we still sell games, but now we talk about, well, but if I want to play this game with my son or my daughter, I want to play this game with my family. I think there is something to be said at the moment. I think there's a whole generation of gamers before us, our parents, who, let's be honest, when we talk about games like Monopoly and Trouble and all of these kind of, game of life, they're all very roll and move sorts of games, but they're actually not fun. Whereas now, the kids, like, there's so many games that I can introduce to my kids. I want to bring up to you, ask, what are the, how for you, I mean, your teenage kids are different to my, you 6-year-old kids, right?
Yeah.
What do you find in terms of getting your kids to the table? Are you finding that you're having to fight the teenage angst, as it were? Do you find that they're actually chomping at the bit to play things? Let's have just a quick chat about, what do you reckon?
What I'll say, I truly do believe what makes games today, hobby games anyway, and I really hate that term, hobby games, because it makes it sound like it's more niche than what it needs to be.
It's board games. But the problem is that we have a
games.
generation of people that when you say board games, they think Monopoly, because that's what we all grew, and that's what we grew up on. That's what we did.
And I will say, and I'm glad to start, and this is just a side note, I'm glad to start seeing some of the games that, for anyone who's watching on the video, some of these games that you see on the shelf here are currently available at Kmart, at Target, and it's amazing. I'm so happy to see that happening. But what I will say, I think the big one is theme.
Yep.
I know certainly when I was growing up, a lot of the board games that came out that were themed around things that I liked, they were just variations on Trouble or Candyland or something like that.
Or Monopoly. Monopoly, Simpsons Monopoly.
Yeah. I remember. So I'm a kid of the 80s. So when I was growing up, so late 80s, early 90s, Ninja Turtles were the thing. And I remember I had the Ninja Turtles board game. That was just a slightly rebranded version of Candyland.
Right.
Really, that's all it was. Okay, and it had little extra mechanics.
That's what Bluey Shadowland at the moment is actually.
Pretty much. And as much as I loved the game, it was a garbage game.
Yeah.
Thinking back, it's like, it was a pretty bad game. But these days, I can ask my kids, or rather, I can look at what they're interested in and find something that really appeals to them. So a really good example. So my oldest daughter, and as she's entered the whole, as she's gotten a little bit older, she's kind of moved a little bit away from board games. She'll be back though. She'll be back.
She's a teenager. She's got other things to worry about at the moment.
It's fine. But I remember my little Scythe was one that she absolutely loved for a period there because of the chibi minis. That came in it. She loved them. Okay, and so she was more than happy to play the game,
just so she could play with the chibi.
Just so she could play with little minis.
Yeah.
My eldest son, at the moment, or rather, as I've said it on a couple episodes of the podcast, we've been playing Marvel Champions. Or we'll play. Apologies, that's more Ra tokens just falling over there. Or we'll be playing more sort of chess-like games. And as much as he does love chess, but the thing is, whether it be Marvel Champions or whether it be one of the sort of like the themed head-to-head games, it's because I can put it in front of him and say, hey, here's this cool game. It plays a little bit like chess, but he'll be the first one to say, oh, but this looks really cool and this looks a little bit different. Yeah, let's give it a go. And Marvel Champions, well, it's Marvel. Hell, you put that in front of me, I'm going to be interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really think that's where it's at. And then sort of going further down, my younger son, he just wants to play anything I'm playing. So he's still very much so like, what's mum and dad doing? I want to be involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the trickiest ones, though, is my 11-year-old daughter. She can be very hit and miss with board games. But even so, she still picks games off the shelf because of how the box looks. And again, I keep coming back to that. Yes, marketing works. yes, that's how they sell board games, but good board games that have a great looking cover, that have a great theme embedded in them, I think that is 80% of the battle.
Yeah.
With trying to get the kids over the line, and that is certainly something that didn't exist. Certainly when I was coming up through the hobby.
No, I highly agree with you. And something that I've started to notice with my kids is that my kids at the moment, both of them just love games.
Yep.
Now, your kids, again, we're talking about 15-year-old all the way down to a 7-year-old, right? So early to teenager sort of stuff, and then, pre-10-year-old, right? So they're obviously going to be attracted to things that look nice and things that they're interested in, which is very true. I've got to say that my kids just love games. Something that I've noticed with my kids, so some of the games that I own at the moment for the kids, which is we own, so my son who's 2.5, actually he's literally about to actually turn 3 in 7 days, literally a week from now. He is, no, that's not right, in 3 days from now.
I was going to say.
It's 3 days, it's on Saturday. Sorry, I'm getting confused by, anyway, moving on. He's like, same thing, he loves Paw Patrol, so he's all about Paw Patrol. However, he loves the Bluey ones as well, so he pulls them out, so he loves the theme. But some of the games that we have include, we've got The Floor is Lava, we include the Disney's Mad Tea Party, we have Bluey Shadowlands, which I've mentioned on a previous podcast. I'm just looking at what I actually have down there. I've got Sequence for Kids, Operation, and also Spotted. Spotted is such a good kids game.
Yeah.
And then we also have some of the charades and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, guess who is his new favorite thing? So for younger kids, what I'm finding is that I think there's actually a natural love of play that we all have. And some board games really involve getting you that natural sense of play. Like one of the things, they love Mousetrap. My boy loves Mousetrap.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to play Mousetrap. Also, by the way, Mousetrap as a game is just terrible.
It is. Yeah.
It's such a terrible game. I have never actually played until I was like, oh my God, I thought this was the best game ever. It's literally not a game. It's even worse than some other things.
And it's the worst game when you look at setup versus gameplay.
Mate.
Like the cost to play is
my boy, my soon to be 3-year-old, literally sat there for half an hour asking me to reset the Mousetrap every time so that he could watch the army man fly up and catch, like, into the basket and catch the mice. Like, he was like, yeah, right. I'm like, oh my God. I think there's actually this natural love of play that I think we can instill in our kids. And I feel like we kind of touched on, there's this previous generation of gamers and people who that love of tabletop / we say hobby games, right? Because board games such as Monopoly, I really truly feel killed a lot of the love for board games for a lot of people. Why? Because if you never won Monopoly, you just were like, why would I ever want to go and play a game at a table where I spend 2 hours or an hour and a half, I just lose, I'm not having fun, and I watch my sister over there who's just got all the money rubbing in my face that I can't even get Mayfair, right?
I want to know what games of Monopoly you playing that's actually over in 2 hours.
Well,
it's usually a lot longer than that.
Yeah, right, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to be a little bit nice in terms of the timing here, but like, I really do feel like there's a lot of people who had that love of tabletop board gaming just completely wiped from them because they could not stand the thought of being at a table and having to sit through the excruciating experience that were games like Trouble, for example, which Trouble was the game where you pop the ones in the center. You're not allowed to start moving your pawns until you roll a 7. So if you never roll a 6 or whatever it is, So if you never roll a 6, you're never moving. And there's a very real chance that your friend / brother / family member can move all of their pieces before you ever move, and I've seen it happen before, and like it legitimately, I can see like this is boring, games are crap, like on some of the little kids' face when they play these games. Now, I don't actually need to prod my kids. Mine are younger than yours. Again, they're a 6-year-old and about a 3-year-old. I don't need to prod them to play games. They just want to play games, and granted, a lot of it is the novelty of doing stuff at the moment, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly feel that in a year from now, and even like really soon, because Evie's now in year 1, I can start playing some of these other games with her, like Carcassonne. She wants to play. I can play Ticket to Ride with her. And she wants to because she has seen the bits. And even my boy is like, ooh, things to play with. I really do think we are in the best time alive, because I really do feel like we have a whole nother generation of board gamers who are going to be taught by us about how like there are good games and bad games, when I felt like the mass printing and production of the previous generation was like very limited to, we can only get a cardboard board and what we can print on there, and then we need to come up with something, which is why the 90s were the start of some really great board games, because people went, no, there's got to be better things we can do with just cardboard and bits of cubes.
And I will say, like, the other thing that I think exists now, which I don't think existed when I was growing up. I mean, I know when I was growing up, you had Hero Quest, you had I think it was Space Crusade was also called, and stuff like that, and they were cool, but you needed to really be in the hobby to know about those games. You couldn't just pick them up.
No. We had Hero Quest at the time, and I didn't know what it was, and then it just went to the wayside, and I'm like, oh my god, I wish I still kept my Hero Quest. Yeah. Like, that was such a good game.
I had access to it, but it wasn't my game when I was growing up. But there's one game that I'll always shout out, and I've had people say it's fine, it's okay. Dixit.
Yeah.
Dixit represents a style of game that I think will last in families and should be in every collection. I've said this before. I know a lot of people say Dixit is fine. I've played the hell out of it, but just on the basis that you've played the hell out of it, should give it a vote enough to basically it stay on your shelf.
That's why I've got some of my gateway games stay there for the exact same reason.
Because the thing about Dixit, unlike other games that we've spoken about, it is literally just art. It's just art and imagination. The whole game is based on imagination.
Yeah.
It is supposed to play at like 4, 5. So like we're talking about families here. It is a game that you are supposed to play with your family. It is absolutely designed that way. It is nothing more than art on cards. And the goal of the game is to be clever enough to get someone to pick your card. To be obvious enough to get at least one person to pick your card, but be just clever enough to prevent everyone from picking your card. That's how you maximize your points.
It's basically a very artisan version of Cards Against Humanity, but but more that kind of like where it invoking obviously naughtiness and silliness. It invokes imagination and
that's right,
and also almost like a cerebral kind of communication between the players.
But because of that, because you're being put in a position where you have to be creative without needing to draw, without needing to use plasticine or use anything like that, it literally is just imagination on the table. It has there are no boundaries, there are no limits. I had my 4-year-old son, when he was 4, playing Dixit with us, and he would say he'd play a card, and I mean he at the time he had a speech impediment and so on and so forth, and even still he would play that game with us, and it would be something he'd basically put his card face down on the table, and his clue would be blue. That's all you need to do, but yet it would create so much discussion at the table. Where once all the cards were flipped, we'd all start voting. Oh, I think it's this one. I think it's that one. And then even my older kids will then try to actually sort of almost
understand him.
Well, more than understand him, but the game would then take a different, or almost take a different level, if you will, within my family, because then you got my kids trying to suck each other out.
Right.
They'd be going, I'm going to vote for the second card. Which one are you voting for? So, don't vote for the second card. That's the card I was going to vote for. And then tiles flip, and one's got a 3, one's got a 5. And then you got my wife and I, we both voted 2. And we're going, are we just being outdone by our own kids here?
Yeah.
And on top of that, the game is over in 30 minutes. Dixit is, I've said it again. I wish Dixit existed when I was a kid. It's not my favorite game, but it is the game that gets played almost the most, almost exclusively with across every member of my family, because it is so accessible. And I think that's the other factor as well, accessibility. The accessibility of games today outstrips any of the games that I had growing up easily.
Yeah, and I think, I agree. I agree. I also don't think we asked the question of what do you need to do to get your kids to the table, and I think the actual answer is not a lot.
No.
I think kids and even adults naturally gravitate towards games.
Yep.
Why? I think it's, again, I talk about this as my point. It's a shared experience. and it's something that we can share together and do something. And not only does it necessarily become a shared experience, it can become something that can make us closer.
Yep.
Something that can do, and I don't think I know it sounds like maybe a bit of a cop out, but I will reiterate, you don't have to do anything to entice kids and people to play your games. The marketing does that for you.
Yep.
And honestly, the fact that people are like, oh, you got no Monopoly in your collection. I'm like, no, I don't. And in fact, you want to play a game? Pick one. Let's go. I'll gladly play any of them with you.
And that's really it. That is honestly, I mean, yeah, we both are, and other members of our group are, extremely lucky to have as many board games as we do. And we're also, we're lucky, and further, we're lucky to be able to display it.
Yeah.
And have them available. But that's really all I do. When my kids are sort of doing their whole "I'm bored, I don't know what to do" thing, like the first day of the holidays, 10 a.m. on a Monday, where I get the "I'm bored," and said, "Yeah, we are officially like 2 hours into the holidays.
Go pick a game, let's play."
That's really all I do. I'll say, "Look, make sure your room's clean. Once you've done that, go pick a board game."
Love it.
And that's it. And they will pick a game. Again, I hope I remember how to play it. I've had one of my kids pick On Mars before, and I'm going, let's
not do that right now.
Let's aim for that one, but like one day. But why don't you pick this one, or why don't you have a look on this shelf and pick a game from there? And invariably they do, and invariably we play it, and we have a great time.
And at the end of the day, that is why we do this hobby.
Yep.
It is literally why we play these games. They're here for a good time. All right, well, that was thank you for sharing the stuff about your family and your kid with Dixit. That was really lovely. I really appreciate that. I think we're going to bring it to the end here now. I think we're going to close this one out.
Sounds good.
All right, well, if you enjoyed what you listened to, ladies and gentlemen, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that follow, hit that subscribe. We are on all your podcasting apps of choice. We are on YouTube. Go to www.youtube.com, type in @BG Gateway into the search bar. You'll find us, see the video version of this podcast. We'd love you to be there.